Afro-Latina, Living My Passion, from Breaking the Afro-Latino Yoke in Western Mass blog. I have with me today a very special guest, somebody who I'm really honored and delighted to be chatting with today. He is a CEO of Vigilance Records. He's a recording artist, he's a producer, he's an engineer, a video director, and a newbie film director of the groundbreaking documentary Out of Darkness. Out of Darkness is a 3-act documentary starred by some of the most genius sociopolitical minds of the 21st century. And the framework is a visually stunning, intelligently introspective archaeological masterpiece, I have to say. And so Act 1 is called A War in History, and it basically vividly illustrates why so-called African Americans, aka Pan-Africans, continue to suffer daily injuries in every sphere of life. So I give you the architect, Brother Amadeuz. Welcome.
Wow, that was a great introduction. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm glad to be here. I'm glad we finally got this going. Yeah,
it's been a struggle. It's been part of the struggle, I should say.
Yeah.
And it's funny because of sometimes technological difficulties, people get to know each other better.
Yes.
So let's just jump right in, because I know we don't have a lot of time.
Okay.
And so I want the audience that is to be introduced to you via your own words. And so tell us about this first, we're going to focus on this first act, which is A War in History.
Okay.
And tell us how did you experience this war in history, Amadeuz? We're going to focus on this first act, which is A War in History.
Okay.
And tell us how did you experience this war in history, Amadeuz?
You still there?
Yes. I think that's a technical glitch, so let's just move on.
Okay. So I experienced the war on history mostly by not being told my history. That was the war that I experienced because I didn't even know there was a war on history, and I didn't even know we had a history. It took me 34 years of my life before I was even introduced to our history. And this was completely, almost by accident, it happened. Like I said, I had gone through my whole life. I had gone through, grades 1 through 12, went to college, got my degree. I grew up somewhat in the church. I come from a family of deacons and reverends, and going to church, I was never told who I was or who we were as a people or where we come from. Not even a piece of it. I mean, I probably learned more about our history through rap music, ironically, than I did from school or any other institution. And now it's funny because you can literally get on Facebook and learn more about African history in one day than you will your whole life anywhere else, right? So
right.
That's it really just woke me up to what was going on. And I found when I started researching the history, it made me realize why so much was being hidden from us, right? Mm-hmm. It's funny because I was just watching this morning a documentary called A Great and Mighty Walk by Dr. John Henry Clarke, which I've seen numerous times. And that was actually the documentary that inspired Out of Darkness. And that was the documentary. I actually saw this for the first time in 2006 on my way to the studio randomly. And it just totally captivated me to the point where I was pretty much like in tears watching this because I had never been exposed to this information before. And if anybody's watching this and they don't know who Dr. John Henry Clarke is, please, like, immediately after this is over, please go and just YouTube him. But the reason why I brought that up is because he says that during his awakening process, he actually went and talked to Arthur Schomburg, and he wanted to know. He said he was like a teenager, and he approached Arthur Schomburg, and he said, "I want to know African history henceforth, right now, within the hour, all of it." And Arthur Schomburg actually told him, he said, "Go and study your slave masters. Go and study Europe, right? And go study European history, and that will tell you." It will explain to you why it was necessary for them to remove African people from the respectable commentary of world history. So that is pretty much the path that I took. I started, actually, before I studied African history, I studied a lot of Illuminati conspiracy theory stuff and briefly the history of Europe. So I had a good idea of who the entities were that were, committing this war on history on us, and the people that are in control of the world because we let them be in control, right? So that's kind of how I got into African history. Like, we had previously discussed, I come from music background, segued into music videos, and I kind of got tired. I stopped music to do video, and then I was kind of getting tired of music video because of the industry politics, and just because I wasn't fully able to create something that was totally my own, right? So I got a strong urge to use my talent to do something for us, for African people. But I didn't know it was going to be about African history at first. It was initially just going to be about the economic wealth disparity and about slavery and how slavery contributed to that, because the first person I really ran into that kind of woke me up very recently, the person who planted the seed was Dr. John Henry Clark when I saw Great and Mighty Walk. But 10 years later, or 8 years later, as I began to research the film and what, the thesis of the film being the economic wealth disparity, I ran into Dr. Claude Anderson on YouTube. And he really sent me down a rabbit hole.
That's the brother who wrote, pardon me, that's the brother who wrote Power Economics or Powernomics.
Yeah. And again, if anybody's watching this and does not know who Dr. Claude Anderson, please go research this man, because he's incredible. So he kind of set me on the path as far as what I thought the initial thesis of the film was going to be. So I then wanted to include maybe like just a little tiny part about where we were before slavery, because I didn't know any of that. So then I started to research that, and I found out that was 99% of world history was the hidden history that we're not told about. And that sent me down another rabbit hole, which I call it my my second awakening process. So that's pretty much how that happened. And I started researching. I started off, just casually, just browsing YouTube and coming across different scholars, and then I would watch a lot of Dr. Henry Clark's lectures and go and buy the books he would be talking about. Buy the books off Amazon, and I was literally, reading like a book a week for pretty much like all of 2013 and half of 2014 until I actually started filming the film. and just researching all this material and just putting it together, and just my mind was blown, you know, studying ancient Egypt, studying you know, the early African inspired civilizations in America, studying the Moors in Europe, you know, studying all of this stuff. And you know, everything that I came across was literally just, it was just you know, it was a huge awakening for me.
Let
And
me ask you. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I thought you were wrapping up. I wanted to ask you
yeah,
sort of
well,
a follow up.
just one point. Last point was, you know, researching all of this information, you get to a point where you realize so much has been hidden from you, deliberately hidden from you, to a point where you almost get angry. You know, you definitely go through a phase where you start to get angry.
Yeah, definitely.
And you know, you have to but you just have to understand why. And that, you know, that's why I said when I first started answering this question is, why has all this stuff been hidden from us? And it's because we're such a great people and such a powerful, ingenious people that, you know, if they take their foot off of our neck for 1 second, we will, you know, it'll be a
We'll
totally
soar.
different paradigm. You
We
know,
will soar. Yeah, definitely.
so that's what happens.
So I know that there's a lot more to that story, but
Yeah,
this is a short clip.
right.
So while I would love to just sit here and let you reminisce and go through, you know, walk us through all the earlier memories, I know we don't have a lot of time. So let me push a little bit and say and ask, while you were, you know, coming across, you know, doing all these different studies about Illuminati, you know, then you had, you know, Dr. Henry Clark, then you had Claude Anderson. How were you walking differently? Because what were your values, interests, and principles prior to gathering that information, or even coming into, you know, encountering that information? What were your value, interests, and principles? You know, Elder Kaba Hiawatha Kamene, a esteemed professor at, you know, NYU with a long history in education.
Mhm.
He talks about he actually opens the film with the thought about, you know, we need to think about why history is taken from us, and
Yeah.
not just why, but how is history taken from us?
Yes.
And he says that our history, that the way to oppress a people is to take away their language, their history, and their psychological factor.
Right.
And he breaks down psychological factor as values, interests, and principles.
Right.
And so we don't walk around thinking, well, this is my value, this is my interest, and this is my principles. We just sort of live. You know, we're surviving.
Right.
We're grinding every day. You know, we're just trying to survive, just trying to put a roof over our head and food on the table, and, you know, the Jordans on the sneaks, and most of us anyway. Some of us, you know, have different values, interests, and principles. Do we all have, you know, the same values, interests, and principles? No.
No.
And so as a people, you know, we've been so tattered.
Yeah.
What were your values, interests, and principles, and how did they change as you encountered all these amazing scholars?
Again, to answer that question, I would have to revert to Dr. John Henry Clark, when he says all the time that we live in a Eurocentric intellectual universe. And that is how I would describe, and I'm not alone in this. I think we all have been indoctrinated into this Eurocentric intellectual universe. But if I had to describe my values, it was probably a European, Eurocentric, intellectual, Christian universe that I was brought up in, right? And the Christian aspect really comes from Africa. These values come from Africa because the people who actually gave us Christianity, the European, they never really had the temperament to really practice Christianity. but it was still given to us. And African people, being the spiritual people that we are, we spiritualized it and we made it fit, and we gave it substance, and we made it real. So like I said, I come from a family of deacons, reverends. So those values were always instilled in me to do good, typical Christian values, but really living them and not just saying them, not just going through the motions. I was always taught to be Christ-like, hence Amadeuz Christ, hence, the tattoos all over my body. I got scriptures all over my body. So that's how I was raised, and I always had a strong affinity for Africa, but I never knew any of the history. I didn't even know Africa had a history. So the best way I can kind of describe it is, I always relate the brain to a CPU, right? In technical terms, as your brain, your central processing unit. And our central processing unit, for the most part here in America, is we're given a European processing unit. So everything, all the data that goes through that CPU is going to be interpreted from a Eurocentric intellectual standpoint. And what we have to do as African people is, what I had to do is kind of go through all my software and say, I don't need this, I don't need this, I don't need this, I don't need this, and kind of download new software, new African software. So I have a new, I have a new way that I'm interpreting material, interpreting things that are happening to me. And it really gave me a sense of confidence that I didn't have before, because I was always taught that, we were inferior as a people, and you grew up with this inferiority complex, to the point where we shun anything that has to do with Africa.
Right.
We really do. And we really look at Africa with this contempt, right? And I would, after I woke up, I would literally get into arguments with African people, who would tell me, Africa, there's nothing in Africa. Africa is just a mud hole, and it's.
Come on, tell it.
Yeah, and we will fight, and I give up, man. Like, with certain people, it's like that they have their own way of thinking, and everything, like Atlantis Browder says in the film, they had to tell us that everything associated with Africa was negative, but yet everybody's in Africa stealing all the gold and the diamonds and the resources and the materials to make like everything comes out. Everything is still, Africa is the center stage for the world still. It's the richest continent. So I see why we are taught to look away from Africa, because they want to recolonize it, and they want to steal the resources of the world, because the world cannot survive without Africa. And as soon as African people collectively throughout the world, we realize that the whole game is over, but we're so indoctrinated with this white supremacy that, we don't see it yet, but we're starting to wake up.
I would say that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say that this is what you call a deliberate divergence.
Yes.
So deliberately diverting our attention from world politics, from world history, and throwing our attention off of the target that they're attacking,
right?
Which is our history,
right?
And so how did so I guess you really did talk about how did you become aware, and you actually answered the next question, which is how did you become aware and make the shift to to have those values, interests, and principles. You did answer that question, how you made that shift to have those values, interests, and principles serve you.
Right.
And that was going to be my next question, but you answered it.
Cool.
I know we've only got about we've got about sort of 13 minutes left.
Okay.
Because I know you've got to go at 4 o'clock. So, what would you like people to know about the film, and what would you like people to know about you?
I don't think I am important as a person. I
would disagree, but okay.
That's just how I feel. I'm like totally anti-celebrity, anti-fame. I wish I had my sunglasses on right now.
No, don't put those back on. It's about people. Remember that it's about people identifying with you.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But I think I'm as important as just the bringer of this film, and really showcasing these great oracles that we have. You know, Dr. Kaba.
That's a beautiful way to put that.
Professor James Small,
Yeah.
Taj Tariq Bey, Sabir Bey, Tim Wise. I mean, Dr. Joy DeGruy. I mean, Tony Browder is incredible. Dr. Claude Anderson.
Yeah.
You know, Atlantis Browder. These are, I would say, and I don't like to put people on, I don't like to separate people, but I believe these are some of the most profound, you know, most inspiring and motivating, oracle. I call them oracles. Oracles.
Yes, I love how you call them that.
Yeah,
Yep.
oracles of our time.
Yes.
And it was nothing short of the ancestors leading me to these people and giving me the opportunity to be in contact with these people and get them in the film. And I feel that that's really important. And everybody brought something very distinctly unique to the film. And it just fit, everything fit like a puzzle. So what I feel that people will get out of this film, you're going to get an awakening. You're going to, you know, from somebody who's never heard this to somebody who's very, you know, deeply embedded in the conscious community, you're going to learn something. If not, you'll learn about hip hop, you know, and the connection to Africa and it being a spiritual art form and how it's connected to, you know, the youth and how it connects to these youth movements, you know, and it's really powerful. And that's kind of what I wanted to do different with this film is I wanted to cater it to the young people.
Yeah.
And I really, basically the purpose of the film was to bridge the gap between the elders and the youth. That's essentially what the film is.
And you did do that.
The elders have the knowledge and the wisdom. The youth have the energy and the drive. And together, combined, you know, that's powerful. It's very powerful. And I think that comes across very well in the film, visually and energy-wise and everything. So I think that's what people will walk away with. I really want people to be inspired. And, you know, the most important chapter in that film is the nationhood chapter, because nobody's addressing in the mainstream the idea that we've lost our sense of nation. And as soon as you start talking about nationhood with African people, you become a target for assassination.
Well, supposedly we live in post-racial America, so there's no need for that, right?
We're the only people who address themselves without a nation. Italians identify with Italy. Chinese people identify with China. Japanese people identify with Japan. You know, we call ourselves Black, Negro, colored people. And you can't find any of those places on any map. And if anybody can find a map with Blackadonia or Negrodesia or Colourdesia, please send that map to me, because I would like to see it. Because I have not seen a map with any nation with those names. So, and if you really look in the, you know, if you really do some research, you'll find out that Black and white are legal terms, their legal statuses. There's
Right.
no white nation either. So why do we call ourselves black, and why do white people call themselves white? You really need to research that.
Go ahead, bro. Tell it.
And see what, the game that is being played with us as a people. They've taken us out of our nation state of mind. And if you really pay attention, from David Walker's appeal to the Negro to Marcus Garvey to Dr. John Henry Clark, even to Tupac. Tupac was talking about nation building in his last interviews. He was talking about nation, very specific, economics.
He was an intellectual, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah,
so all of these Christs that have come among us have been telling us the same thing. We've lost our concept of nation. And we have to start thinking nation. And I'm not talking about overthrowing the United States or anything crazy like that, but we are really a lost nation within a nation, and we need to get that frame of mind back. And I feel that once we do that, and it's going to be a process, but once we do that, I feel like all of this killing and all of this, I hate saying the black on black crime, but all of this, hate, self-hate, and all of the symptoms that come along with that, I feel that will start to diminish, and we can start moving forward as a people.
Right. Absolutely. Well said. I want to toot your horn a little bit more, because you said so much, and you said it well. One of the many things that the film did for me is it enriched my intellectual palette. Right. So I thought I was already conscious. I thought I was already doing good. Come to find out, there's so much more that I didn't know. So let's talk about that so much more.
Okay.
So as a homeschooling mother of an 11-year-old, I pride myself on searching for the most primary source of information that I can find, which is very hard to find, right? Because usually we work off of, we're working off of old, archaic curriculum. We're working off of, the world is laughing at Americans because we are so not educated about what's going on in the world. We
were never meant to be educated.
Right. And so one of the things that I loved about the film is that it shows you what really archaeologically, this is not just a feel-good pro-black, film. This film really touches on science, proven science, the undisputed science, archaeological information. It exposes the fact that we are using false maps.
Right.
That we've been looking at the map. First of all, it's incomplete. It's upside down, and our thinking is incomplete, therefore, and upside down.
Right.
And so this film actually introduces you to the thinking that I need to get some correct maps. I need to start looking at the world, the globe that I live on.
Right.
And that's deep right there. That is just so deep. Because for those of us who really want to educate, who are homeschooling and are sick and tired of the vomit that they make our children swallow at schools, of the school to prison pipeline, of the prison industrial complex that is now starting at kindergarten. I really I really believe and know that this film pushed my thinking further along. And so I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
And that's just one of the many things. We've got 3 minutes left. So I want to just encourage people to really advocate for the screening of this documentary here in the Northeast. The Northeast is touted as a very liberal, leftist, part of the country. And I have to say I disagree.
So is
Sorry.
California. But I will tell you personally, from being raised in California, oh my God, it's probably one of the more racist states. You know what I mean? It's just hidden so well.
Right. It's insidious. Yep. And so I want to say that your film is very different from many of the films that have come out recently. I won't name names, but a lot of coonery and a lot of white savior films that talk about Black, African history, or talk about African American, I should say, history,
Right.
and slavery. But then somehow we get saved in the end by a white guy.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's your film. I mean, yours is a documentary. It's very different. It's a very different spoonful of protein. It's a very different meal. And so I really urge folks who run community centers, folks who are heads of organizations, folks who are doing after school programs, preschool program, who are in the educational field here in the Northeast to request and advocate for the screening of this film here in the Northeast region.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I really want to push this film as far as it can go. But my goal, I almost feel uncomfortable calling it a film, because it's really not a film. It's really an education tool. Even in the theatrical version, it's condensed, right? When the real version comes out, the full extended version, there's 5 additional chapters. So the film is just over 3 hours long. So there's even, I know you've seen the theatrical version, but there's 5 chapters that you haven't even seen yet.
Wow. You holding back on me?
Just for 4 more days.
I thought I had seen it all. Listen, I watched this film 25 times. Wow. I think more than that. I practically transcribed the whole thing.
Wow.
Because I didn't want to get anything wrong. So before you go, yes, I want to invite you back. I want to have you back 2 more times.
Okay.
Because I want to do a series of 3 for each act of the film. So we'll have you back. And thank you everyone for joining Brother Amadeuz Christ and yours truly, Afro-Latina Living My Passion, here at Breaking the Afro-Latino Yoke Blogspot. We love you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Peace.
Thank you.